Hi everyone, my name is Angie Viscianen and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects prospective law students to lawyers for mentoring to help them learn more about the legal profession before they dive headfirst in. And we started doing these weekly meetups so that prospective students would have a chance to interact with current law students as well as lawyers. And we've been inviting guest speakers to come in every week to talk about different topics that might be weighing on people at this time. And so I'm super excited for this week's topic. We're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, and I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Jamilat Adesola, and she is an MBA student at Southern Methodist University here in Dallas. So go Dallas! That's my hometown. So, and she will be talking to you today about what is imposter syndrome and how can we overcome it. So Jamilat, I'll let you take it away.
Hello, thank you so much, Angie, for the warm introduction. My name is Jamilat Adesola. Thank you all so much for joining in on this conversation. As Angie mentioned, I do believe that this is something a lot of pre-law students are going through, graduate students or working professionals, anyone that is working in a competitive arena. It's an important conversation to have, and my goal really with this is to help anyone out, anyone that might be experiencing this. If there's any takeaway from this, I would hope that that you all walk away with some tool or resource or even just the motivation to really address imposter syndrome and self-doubt, because it can be stifling. And so I guess I could go right into things. I do have a PowerPoint to use. So as I mentioned, this webinar will be about imposter syndrome, conquering self-doubt at a high level. My experience, what I went through as a student, and really just continuing that conversation. And I want this to be as engaging as possible. So please feel free to comment any thoughts and feelings you have throughout this webinar. I will be as candid. So if there's anything you would like to share, or if there's anything you might relate to, I think it would be great to drop that in the chat room, because someone else might also be experiencing the same thing. And I think it would make this conversation as personable as possible for everyone to really open up and share their experience. So at a high level, I will have an icebreaker, and then I'll go into defining imposter syndrome. I will give a personal introduction, who I am and why this conversation is so important as a pre-law student, as a working professional, and anyone that is going through a lot of self-doubt or stuck in that vicious thought cycle. Ways to overcome it, or the ways I overcame it, and the light at the end of the tunnel. And the last bit of this conversation, we're going to open up the floor to Q, question and answer. So jumping right into the icebreaker. My question for you all, and please feel free to drop this in the chat room, what is your biggest accomplishment and why? And if there's maybe one or two people that are willing to unmute themselves and maybe share their stories about their biggest accomplishment and why it is considered their biggest accomplishment, please feel free to share that as well. I'll start with myself personally. I am Nigerian-American, and I am a first-generation college graduate student. I graduated with a public health promotions degree from the University of Houston. For me, that was a big accomplishment because as a first-generation student and a first-generation immigrant as well, because I am a first-generation immigrant, this was symbolic for my family. It just inspired those around me that are coming behind me and anyone else that was also a student within the family to kind of push on. It marked progressiveness for my parents and my family as immigrants in this country. Angie, is there anyone who would like to share their biggest accomplishment?
Come on, somebody chime in.
Can I chime in?
Yes. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm currently a rising senior in college. So I think My biggest accomplishment was finish. Oh, let me turn on my video. Sorry. I think my biggest accomplishment was finishing the semester. Was definitely a huge accomplishment amid the pandemic and everything. So
congratulations! That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. And for all the current students right now amidst the pandemic and just the political climate, it is definitely a huge accomplishment. I certainly do relate as well to that. I think that we are really going to rise from this situation, graduating with really this adversity under our belt it's a huge deal for all of us as students and for any working professional going through this or early professional. I think this is a huge accomplishment.
Anybody else want to share?
I want to share my biggest accomplishment.
Awesome.
So my biggest accomplishment has been, it's actually happening right now. So it was to take the decision to travel abroad, become a kind of digital nomad, because it's very hard to be confident with that purpose, because I need to I don't know, to internalize all this process first myself, and then be able to convince my parents, to convince my friends that this is the correct decision. Because until now, I get a lot of opinions from a lot of people asking me about, are you okay with that decision you made? It's for real? Do you like living abroad and keep traveling? And I say, yes.
So Carol, and just to clarify for everybody who doesn't know Carol, so you are originally from where? And
Yeah.
you are now studying and living where?
Now I'm living and studying in Madrid. And actually last year I was also in New York. And who knows what is going to be the next country, but there are a lot of countries coming.
Yes, you are a true digital nomad, and that is awesome.
Thank you.
That is awesome. My hat certainly goes off to you, and that is a wonderful accomplishment. And I'm really excited to also hear updates from you as well. So I guess since we did, thank you everyone for sharing all of your accomplishments as well. I think that this will set the tone for the remainder of the webinar. Moving right along. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is the idea that you've only succeeded due to luck and not because of your true talent or qualifications. It's important to understand this definition, and there's many definitions to this, but this is the feeling that most students or working professionals tend to feel, especially when they're working in very, very competitive spaces or challenging environments. And so I would like for all of you to keep this in mind as we move throughout this presentation, and hopefully maybe some of these things relate to you as well. Maybe this definition will give a clearer picture or clearer understanding of what it is, and the realization that a lot of people are also experiencing this as students. So who am I, and why is this important to you? My story. What did imposter syndrome look like for me? As I mentioned, I am a first-generation immigrant. I'm also a MSBA graduate student at the SMU Cox School of Business in Dallas. Shout out to everyone that's from Dallas. But I'm also co-host of the Dual podcast. So I have a very diverse background. And I was always ambitious. I grew up in, being a first-generation immigrant, and I'm sure many of you might relate to this. It is definitely instilled in you the importance of education, of working hard, and performance is a big deal because we do have the hurdle or obstacle of having to overcompensate for that. And this presented itself, imposter syndrome, in my academic career. For me personally, I had a fight or flight or freeze approach to school. So I did well. I would pull those all-nighters. I would study really, really hard. I would get that A and make that grade that I wanted. And I'm sure some of you might relate to this as students or working professionals, working those additional long hours. You know, failure wasn't an option for you. And so that was my baseline, working hard. And it was just my baseline. And so for me, I needed to exceed that. And that was my fight approach. Now, the flight aspect was when I wasn't performing well, when I would make that C or that bad grade, I would essentially freeze. Or I would run away from that really difficult course, like biology or any difficult class that you all may have experienced as a student or being in a competitive, challenging environment. I would make that bad grade, and I might have been in such a catatonic state and just wallowed and really, really laser focused in on the what I considered a failure or a mistake. And I didn't really give myself a pat on the back in terms of making Dean's List or making a great grade. I didn't really internalize those accomplishments and take the time to really soak in and hone in on that. And so with that being said, it created a lot of really great highs for me academically in terms of my performance, and then some lows for me whenever I wasn't performing performing by my standards of what performance looked like. So, you know, I know that this is something that a lot of students relate to, or professionals as well. And I'm wondering, Angie, out of curiosity, if this is something you may have experienced in law school, or even something you've experienced as a working professional now.
Maybe every day of my life. No, I mean, really, I think, you know, when I was in college, I felt it. When I was in law school, I definitely felt it. Working as a young lawyer, I definitely felt it. You know, I think this feeling is a very familiar feeling that'll come and go in your life. And sometimes, you know, we're all struggling to learn new things and develop ourselves. And it's uncomfortable, right? You're always going to be at a state of discomfort while you're growing. And so during that time, you're really not sure, am I making it because I'm good, or am I making it because I'm lucky, or what's going on here? And I think there's always this sinking feeling that you don't belong. I know, you know, when I started practicing as a young lawyer, law school puts you in this weird bubble where you do see a lot of other female law students, you do see a lot of other minority law students, and then I got into the workforce, and the minorities and the women started to disappear. And it was very scary. I mean, I remember being in rooms of 20 or 30 lawyers, and there were maybe 4 or 5 women. Sometimes I was the only woman. You know, I think it can be very terrifying, and you have this sinking feeling like, I don't belong here for a reason that, you know, I don't deserve it. And it's always that constant struggle with yourself, but you have to be able to push through those fears and realize you earned a spot in the room. You got there somehow. So now it's your time to own it. And so, yes, I definitely felt that a lot in my career.
And as I'm listening to you talk, I also think back to just also so as I mentioned, I am a graduate student at SMU. I probably am one of 3 women of color too as well. And so that representation too feels a bit isolating, and you may feel or go through the experience of kind of being there out of luck and not because of the hard work or the intelligence that is required for you to be able to get through college. As a first-generation student, or just in general, or get through any rigorous program such as law school. And so I graduate and I get to graduate school. Again, I'm faced with the same challenges and adversity. Business analytics, which is the concentration I'm in, is very challenging. The program is one of the top in the country, but it is extremely difficult. And there aren't a lot of people that look like me there. So I don't know if this is something you all also felt as well, but it can feel very isolating. So funny enough, when I was in one of my flights or freeze modes where I was going through the motions of being in this program, I was lying in my bed one day, avoiding my responsibility as a student and graduate student, and scrolling through Instagram. Funny enough, social media is so powerful and informational, but I came across imposter syndrome. And that was the first time I was introduced to what it was. And I really, really read into read into what kinds of things people with imposter syndrome were experiencing. And it sounded a lot like what I was experiencing as a graduate student, what I experienced in undergrad, and what I generally would experience in evaluative situations such as school. And so I really took some of the advice that was given and applied it to my life in order to get to a place where I wasn't stuck in that vicious thought cycle of doubting myself and not internalizing my accomplishments and focusing on my mistakes. With that being said, how do you identify you have imposter syndrome, or this is something you're struggling with? There are so many different symptoms associated with this, but how I knew was I struggled with internalizing accomplishments. As I mentioned, you do really well on an exam, you study really hard, you work hard, you perform well, but you don't really internalize that. Or you make dean's lists, or you get a scholarship or a grant, or you do something really cool like start an organization or a club at school. But you don't internalize those things. You just kind of take it as standard for yourself. Maybe you're a perfectionist. So for you, that's kind of what you expect for yourself. You don't really feel like you know as much as everyone else does. And I know this is something that's typically the face of imposter syndrome when we're having this conversation. You feel like you're wearing a mask and you're kind of pretending to know everything. It is a very isolating feeling. You feel like you're in the position you're in because symbolically, or you're there because of luck, you're the diversity hire, you're the diversity candidate, you're there to fill some sort of quota, but it's not because of you, it's not because you're intelligent. And these are the thoughts that really drive imposter syndrome. The first way I was really able to overcome imposter syndrome is through community. This is why Leg Up is so important. What Angie's doing is really great for students, law students that are dealing with imposter syndrome or just have a lot of feelings of self-doubt. I would not underestimate the power of community. So find a support group. If you're a law student, or a pre-law student, and you aren't already a part of the Leg Up community, I would certainly encourage you to join that because it makes a world of a difference. Imposter syndrome is very isolating. You feel alone. You feel like you're by yourself. And community helps you identify with other people that are also in challenging programs and experiencing a lot of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that can come along with being in a challenging environment or a competitive space. Another way I was able to overcome this was communication. I, as a Nigerian-American, wasn't always open about sharing my thoughts and feelings. I don't know if this is also something other people are going through as well, or experience just culturally or just in general in their home, but you kind of tend to keep a lot of your emotions to yourself because you may view these things as a sign of weakness. Or you may just not have an outlet really. But the first thing I would urge anyone to do is to speak up about how you're feeling. The first step to healing, the first step to breaking this just being in your head is communicating. It kind of acts as a brain dump for you so that you're vocalizing how you're feeling. And you might feel a huge sense of relief when you are talking about how you feel and you have your support system or a group of individuals going through the same thing also talk about how they're feeling, and they're there to kind of act as like they're there to help you identify what is true, and maybe what is just negative self-talk. Another way I was able to really overcome this is just to reframe my thinking in general. The subconscious mind is powerful. How are you filtering the negative self-talk? How are you speaking? What are the thoughts that run through your mind? If you are thinking negative things about yourself, it can really drive your actions and behaviors. As I mentioned before, when I wouldn't perform up to my standards, whether that was at school or some competitive internship I had, I would perform a lot of negative self-talk, which contributed to wanting to kind of run and hide from anything I considered challenging. The last thing I would also urge everyone to do is have a confidence vault. I know that humbleness is important, but if you are writing down your achievements, if you are keeping it in a mental jar, it really, really helps you when you're facing adversity or any problem or any issue or any difficulty. It helps, it acts as the support and crutch that you need. It helps you check your negative self-talk. It helps you.
Sorry, Jamila, I just wanted to chime in on this part because I think this is super important. Not only does it help you talk yourself up when you're down and you're feeling like you're not enough, it also, keep a list of all the times that people have praised you. Keep a list of all of the times that other people have recognized things in you, even if it's small, and go back and collectively look at all those things and realize what other people see in you. Sometimes it's hard for us to find those good things in ourselves, but when you see how other people see you, it's even more powerful. It's like, oh, these people saw this in me. Why can't I see this in me? So I totally agree with this, keeping this confidence vault, also keeping track of all the compliments that you receive. I think so many of us can't accept compliments, and having those compliments in your vault or your jar helps you really eventually go back and read them, internalize them, and feel thankful for them.
Absolutely. Writing down all of the accomplishments, big or small. I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be merit-based or related to school. But writing it down and keeping it close to me really helped with reaffirming the beliefs the positive beliefs I have about myself. And instead of kind of laser focusing on all of the negative situations that come up as a student, maybe in terms of your performance or grades, or even as a working professional, it really does help. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? This is why all of what I'm saying is so important, because it really is a negative thought cycle, and you really can get stuck in it, and it really affects your outlook about yourself. And so practicing all of these things really helped with my viewing my value in a realistic way. I was a lot gentle with myself. So I talked to myself positively, and you're human and you make mistakes, and mistakes are good. They present opportunities for growth, right? So even as a student, if there is something that you may not have done well on a test, then it also, it could present the opportunity for you to learn more about where your weaknesses are on the subject. And then it also helped with my self-awareness. I was able to identify my emotions better. I am able to understand when I am feeling down about something, if I need a break, and just really being able to put a name or label to an emotion and self-soothe so that I can get to a place where I am more confident and more productive as a student. And then lastly, overall, it just helped me become more of a positive person because I wasn't laser focusing on negative things. And I changed my perspective on failure and mistakes. I didn't see failure as such a negative thing. I began to see it more positively. And that was, it really strengthened me, not just professionally or academically, but personally as well. And Angie, I also wanted to ask you as well how you were able to overcome or ways that you're able to overcome imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. Building my tribe was huge. Finding people who believed in me, finding people who would help me see the good parts of me when I couldn't see them was really important. And finding a mentor who would do that for me was huge. I've had many mentors in my life, and they come in all different sizes and they all come in all different types. Sometimes they're very fleeting. Sometimes people come into your life for a couple of months, but they were meant to be there for a reason to help you through that tough time. Some mentors will stick with you for the rest of your life, and they'll help you see things in yourself and how much you've grown over time. And those relationships have been absolutely invaluable in helping me. I mean, I literally just had a call with one of the women that I consider my mentor for forever. She's known me before I went to law school, and she was one of the first lawyers I ever interacted with. And she's now an advisor for my company. And I was telling her about some of the struggles that I've been having, even in the past few months. And she's like, I believe in you. I trust that you are going to be able to overcome these because these are the qualities that I see in you, that I know that you can make it through this and you will find a way. And just hearing that just really helps with, self-affirmation and helps you overcome this idea like, I'm not meant to do this. I'm not meant to accomplish this. And then I think the other thing is we're so afraid of failure and admitting those vulnerable spots. But what we need to realize is failure is not the opposite of success. It's like if you fail, you learn from it. So you're only going to learn by continuing to try new things and continuing to fail. So totally okay. If you fail at things, don't be scared of that. Don't not attempt something just for the sake of, I'm too afraid to fail. Just fail hard, fail fast, yes. Fail often, and don't be afraid to fail. I fail all the time. I try a million new things all the time that don't work. And that's okay. But I had to start getting out of my own head about failing. I was like, I just have to go ahead and fail, and that's the hardest part. And, yes, acknowledge your successes, keep track of all of those things. I used to keep track as I was a first year associate, when I was working in a law firm. I would keep track of, all the emails that my bosses would send me that said like, good job on this or good job on that, or I really like the way that you did this. I would keep that all in a file, a specific folder in my email. And on the days that like, I was really feeling bad, like, oh my God, I just don't think I could do this for 20 years of my life. I would read through those, accomplishments. And I would be like, okay, I am learning something. I am doing something positive and moving forward, even though I don't necessarily feel it in that moment. So you have to be able to acknowledge your successes totally. I just have a real quick story about imposter syndrome and why it is so close to my heart. So before COVID started happening, I was mentoring students live, and I would take them to events and help them learn how to network with lawyers. So I would take groups of pre-law students to bar association events that, I'd run it by the bar association chair first, whoever was hosting the event, make sure that they were okay with them being there. But I wanted them to have a chance to interact with lawyers because many pre-law students would never step foot into a bar association event. And so I took my 3 pre-law students to an event about imposter syndrome. And it was a dialogue event. So they actually split everybody up into tables, and you were supposed to talk about it and how you overcome it. And so we all had to draw numbers, and they randomly assigned us a table. So I wasn't able to sit next to my mentees. I couldn't protect them. And I didn't know what these lawyers were going to say to them, to be honest. And so, here we are, they first start talking about imposter syndrome and saying, all of us are probably sitting here feeling like we don't belong. It's important that, you help people feel like they've earned a seat at the table, all of these things. And so we were supposed to switch tables every 15 minutes. So when we were switching, I go up to one of my mentees and I was like, how'd it go? What did you think? And she was like, honestly, I think I'm going to leave. And I said, why? What happened? And she said, so we're sitting here talking about how we probably don't feel like we don't belong. And so we're introducing ourselves, and I'm sharing that I'm a pre-law student and I'm interested in going to law school. And one of the lawyers at my table goes, you don't belong here. And it took me off guard. And she said, so the lawyer told me, he's like, this event is only for lawyers. I don't know why you're here. And luckily, there was another person from the committee that, organized the event at that table who spoke up, and he was also a lawyer, and he said, no, absolutely, you do belong here. We want all students to be here. And he said, absolutely, don't feel like you don't belong here. This is exactly what we're talking about. You shouldn't be shaming people for showing up at these things. And so she said, she just felt so attacked by it and so scared, and she just wanted to go. And I was like, no, don't go. So like, here we are at this event where we're all talking about feeling this way, and somebody's like, literally making her feel that way in the moment. And I just, I was like, gosh, I could just go punch that lawyer that said that to her. But, you can't always protect, your fellow colleagues or friends or anything from these things happening. But we can all understand when we go through those things, and we can all, help other people not feel that way by welcoming them, by giving them a seat at the table, by helping them learn how to take that seat at the table. I think it's important not just to manage yourself, but also realize that you can help other people who might be feeling this. When we get into places where we finally have a seat at the table, welcome others alongside you to join you at that table, even if they feel like they don't belong, and help them learn how to, take their seat at the table and take advantage of the opportunities that they're given, and not just sit back and make themselves small. I think that's really, really important.
I totally agree there. I think that for me too was also something that, I, felt a lot, is just making myself feel small and like I wasn't deserving of the things that I had accomplished. And, looking back, I wish that I was able to really internalize more of the positive stuff and not sort of laser focus on situations like that where you may encounter someone or something that invalidates your seat at the table, and not take it as personal. So I definitely appreciate you for sharing your story, and thank you. Those are really great ways that I feel would help any professional, any attorney, anyone working in a challenging capacity. And I guess we can move into the question and answers. I see that Lisa raised her hand. I'm wondering if she had a question or wanted to contribute as well to the conversation.
I did. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to bring up one thing I found recently, because imposter syndrome and fear of failure, I, sort of felt like I was dealing with fine, but I think sometimes too, even when you have success, like I was posting on LinkedIn and it's great and I enjoyed, and then I had one post go viral. And my first thought when that happened was, now I want to quit because I'm not going to be able to do that again. So let's quit that because the expectations are too high. And that really threw me for a loop, because it's like, wow, imposter syndrome can get you both coming and going. So it can get you both on the failure side and the success side.
Right. That's actually a really good point to make. You felt that it was a high standard and you wouldn't be able to meet that again. I think that is something students may also be dealing with as well.
Yeah. And I felt that way as a student too. In some ways you don't want to do your best, because what if I do my best and I can only do it once? So that way, if I set the bar very low, then I'm never going to feel like I didn't meet it, or, setting your own standards lower than what you can do so that you can meet them and be comfortable and not have to feel like you failed. And so that was a lot of it. As I'm getting messages, as I'm getting this, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to disappoint people. They're going to see my future posts. They're not going to be as good. You know, they're going to message me. I'm not going to have time to respond to them. I'm not going to be the person that I put out there. And that's, you know, I think, like I said, that's the other side of the imposter syndrome. So it was very shocking at 46 that this sort of thing still can be that powerful.
Right. And it also sounds like when we talk about not being able to meet that standard for yourself or accomplish or achieve that again, it almost sounds a lot like the luck aspect of imposter syndrome. Like you were only able to do that out of luck. You're not really as smart or influential as people may think you are in order for your post to be shared as much. So it sounds like a lot of the similar themes that are associated with imposter syndrome as well. There were two other people that raised their hand. I think the first person is also Lisa as well. Is there some, did you still want to contribute too?
Yeah, sure. I just to kind of jump in there. So I don't know what other people's experiences are, but you know, I would like to say that you get older, you get wiser. But like Lisa Goldkuhl said, I'm older than she is, and I still suffer from the imposter syndrome. But it's almost like it's never that you get over it. It's just how you figure how to compensate or deal with it better as you move forward. And so two things I wanted to say that I have found. Number one, when we were talking about tribes, what I think is there is nothing better than having a tribe full of other people with imposter syndrome, because I love my tribe mates because they will celebrate me till the sky comes home. It's like people who have imposter syndrome, when they see somebody else be successful, they love to celebrate them. That has trouble with imposter syndrome, but I used to get made fun of for being a cheerleader. But it excites me when I see other people successful. And so sometimes surrounding yourself by other people who feel the same way is really, really nice, because it's nice because they give you shout outs all the time when you're not comfortable doing it for yourself. So I have found that to be very, very helpful. The other piece of advice I would say to be very, very careful in your professional life, and I have to be very careful of this. In some ways, I think it's a good thing. In some ways, it's a bad thing. When something goes wrong, my first instinct is not, oh, the idiot on my team did it incorrectly. My first thought is, oh, God, what did you do now? And so you have to be really, really careful about that, because in some ways I think it's great that you're not always out there thinking everybody else is doing something wrong. I think that's horrible. But be very careful about always assuming you're the person who did something wrong, and you really have to work hard at not jumping out there and saying, oh, I'm sorry, that's my bad, my mistake. Because I would do that all the time, and I'd find out later, God, it's not your fault, but everybody else thinks it is because you said it. So
yeah, you're my twin, Lisa Lang, on that. That's always the first, is like when something comes up, it's what mistake did I make? And one of the things I also felt, especially if you're in a position of leadership like Lisa Lang is, or I'm a supervisor, when you do that, you model to people that mistakes are really frightening, that they're really a bad thing. When you're overly apologetic, it's just instead of saying, hey, okay, let's see what we can do with this, and kind of figuring it out later. And I also, just one last point, I loved what Lisa said about the age thing, because what I figured out from this LinkedIn experience is I've kind of lost imposter syndrome, having practiced law for 23 years in the legal field. It doesn't really affect me, but anything new I do, that's how your brain works. So any new area, or if I went into a new area of law, you never completely get over it. I think it's always there. So that's just, it's your friend that you gotta talk out of it constantly. That's your inner voice.
Right. Absolutely. I also see that there are a few other people that wanted to also share their stories with imposter syndrome as well.
Ashley, I know you raised your hand, and I think Adser wanted to raise his hand. He just can't do it in his app. So do either of you want to chime in?
I just wanted to second what Lisa Goldkuhl said. I think imposter syndrome for me has been not wanting to set the bar too high, and then, you know, just set the bar lower for myself. And I don't, this is especially prevalent in my schoolwork, where I feel like I don't push myself to the limit because I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, I don't belong in this class. I don't belong in this major. I don't belong like here. But I'm working to change that, and like, especially this semester coming up. And I love what both Lisas mentioned. And I'm glad that I came to this event because it's been really helpful in identifying those things that can potentially hold me back and what has been holding me back. So thank you.
I think what's really interesting is that so many of us feel imposter syndrome because we feel like we don't have the credentials to belong. We don't have enough accomplishments or achievements or skills or whatever. But it's funny because when you're in these situations, it's not like everybody's walking around with a list of their accomplishments plastered on their body. Like, you know, nobody knows what other people have accomplished and what they haven't accomplished. But I think we feel that way. Like we have this sign on us that says, what are the things, all the things we don't have? Like that's what we feel like. And you just need to get out of your own mind about that. Because I'll tell you this, you know, I strongly believe that the most successful of us don't think about all of those things that we don't have. We think about the few things that we do have and how we can use it. You know, 70% of your success will come from just taking advantage of the opportunities that you're given and being like, I got in this room, now I'm going to make something of it. 15% will actually depend on you taking your seat at the table and listening to what's happening and figuring out how you can contribute. And 10% will be how you adapt to those situations, and like 5% are the skills you walked in with. So I think that, you know, we all just need to get out of our heads about that. Just realize, like, here I am. I have an opportunity to make a difference here and contribute to the conversation and deliver some value there. And people will not be paying attention to all the things you don't have, I promise.
Absolutely. I agree with that as well. And thank you all for contributing and sharing your own experiences and perspectives with imposter syndrome. I mean, it's amazing that, you know, I think naturally it's often to me associated with students, but I think people still experience this as professionals as well. So it's great to really hear both of those perspectives. And it looks like Carol raised her hand as well.
Yeah, I did.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Well, in my case, I mean, it's real. I thought that this imposter syndrome was like a joke at the beginning. A lot of my friends that I consider brilliant minds, even brilliant than mine. I don't consider myself as a brilliant person, but I consider them like the most brilliant people I ever met before, and they were having the same. So I couldn't believe when they first told me, but when this started to happen to me, it was very tough. And actually, as I was putting on the chat today, I cried in front of my mentor who is in San Diego about this situation, because sometimes this syndrome gets so wild for me and gets tougher and tougher and tougher to manage. But the thing is that it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how good I am. I can manage this situation. Like sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's like I feel very frustrated. But the point is, like you said, to be focused in the good things we do, and to have, I don't know, in some visual point in front of us, of in our houses, offices, whatever, like a board. I do that in my room. I have a board where I put all the goals that I already reached, and the ones that I wanna reach at some point in future. And I think that can help. And also try to build your own confidence day by day. And like you said, treat yourself with love. Yeah, that's very important. That's very important. And I have the greatest mentor ever, because he's a psychologist. He's also a behavioral scientist, and also he's feminist. So yeah. How else can I ask for? So yeah, he's great. Yeah, he's very, he has been very kind to me during these last 2 weeks. Thank you for this webinar, Angie. It's been very valuable. Thank you, Jamilat. Thank you all, Lisas.
Thank you for sharing your experience with it and what you're going through. As I mentioned, the first step to getting to that place of healing is being able to talk about it. So I'm so proud of you for being able to share that. And mentorship is definitely important. So it's great to hear that you do have a support system. I do believe that that is what is going to help you just with positive affirmation outside of yourself, as Angie mentioned too earlier in the conversation.
Mary, I think you wanted to chime in and say something?
Yes, I wanted to say that I think everyone, I'm from the UK, by the way, I work here in the UK, so hello to everyone. I think what everyone said so far really resonates with me, and I work in-house as an in-house counsel. And I think I'm also of Nigerian descent. So I definitely get what you meant, Jamila, when you say it's just not part of our upbringing to just share how we feel. I'm the first child in my family, so I've got a double whammy of setting an example for my siblings.
Same here.
So over the years, I've had to, kind of suck things up and just be strong and appear strong.
Wow, what a cross to carry. That's hard.
I'm sure Jamila will want to share a lot of her experiences as well, because that's just the way that we're brought up naturally. So we're not really used to sharing. But the way that I've dealt with imposter syndrome over the years is, especially working in-house, is I always ask for feedback, because I deal with a lot of my clients and customers are internal. They're part of the company, and it's quick and easy stuff. So they approach you with stuff, and that's where my imposter syndrome comes in. It's when people perceive that I know this thing, and then they just ask me the question. And when they do, I might not readily be able to remember that I know it. So I sometimes it catches me off guard, and I have to take a step back and just kind of walk myself through it. But I now started to ask for feedback. Wherever I've done something really well, I want to know. If I've not done something very well, I want to know so I can improve on it. And over the years, I've just learned to keep a record of everything, good and bad, because you can only improve if you know where you have any gaps, really. So I guess my advice to you guys would be, don't really see failure as failure. It's just an opportunity to sharpen your skills and get better at it. And like I think somebody said, fail quickly and get back in there. Just get back in there quickly so that your confidence doesn't take a huge knocking. Get back in there and be kind to yourself. I've developed a second inner voice now that counters the imposter syndrome voice. So, and it's a lot kinder, and it pays me a lot more compliments. So yeah, absolutely. I want to encourage you guys by sharing my experience as well.
Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing that. I had to work on developing a positive relationship with feedback because along with failure and mistakes, I saw feedback as something that was negative. I felt that evaluative situation, it was an evaluative scenario, and evaluative scenarios, in my mind, in my mind, my relationship with that was that it would be punitive. I would be told what I'm doing wrong. And so that for me was something I had to really work on, understanding that feedback is actually great for you to understand where you could develop and be a better professional or just be better personally in general, and not taking it so personal. And I'm really glad that you shared the importance of feedback. I think that is valuable to have as a student and as a professional as well.
Can I make a point, please?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand. So one of the things I want to ask Jamilat, did I get it right?
Jamila,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
My name's also kind of, it's not the norm, so I do apologize.
It's totally okay.
Yeah, I experienced imposter syndrome, especially when I joined LinkedIn, because most of my achievements have been academic, but then when you look at the experience part of the page, I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have that much. Like, why am I here? I got into this legal internship and we had to show for it, right? But I wonder if you ever have a weird fluctuation between imposter syndrome and when you achieve something actually great, you feel kind of like too prideful, like, oh yeah, I achieved this great so-and-so academic achievement. I achieved this GPA or this score and this test. Oh, therefore I am better than anyone else. Because honestly, like for me, it sometimes fluctuates between having low confidence and then roller coasters up to like overconfidence. And I wonder if anyone else experienced that kind of bizarre fluctuation, because I think it should be a balance, right? Between having confidence in your abilities, but also staying humble, trying to keep yourself humble at the same time. Yeah, I don't know if, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that point too. From that perspective, I don't know if it was necessarily something that I felt in terms of when I would accomplish something great. I feel like for me it was more dismissed. I naturally would just be, again, it was like a baseline for me. I was expected to surpass myself there. So I do think that that could be something other people are also dealing with in terms of imposter syndrome. And I wonder where this fluctuation for you is rooted. Is it that you are looking for that reaffirming that you are capable of accomplishing something difficult or challenging?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's I think everyone has different flaws. So one of my flaws is I have a lot of internal pride. So if I achieve something great, and if I achieve something great, I get a massive ego. But if I fail, like that proves I was wrong over confidence, so my ego sinks like to the bottom of the ocean. So that, I don't know. I think that's something really weird because that's a flaw in my personality as a human being. So I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I completely agree with Adsar on this. It's I have the same thing of like, and I used to do this in school all the time where I would purposely not do my best because I thought I was smart enough to get straight A's. But what if I did my best and then I didn't get straight A's? Then I would have proven to myself that I wasn't as smart as I thought. So the better thing to do would be like, you can do pretty well and get A's and A minuses and B pluses. But if I tried my best, I'll try, 80, 90%. And that way I always know in my head that I could have been perfect. And it's just such a weird brain trick to try to avoid disappointment.
Okay. Well, thank you both for sharing that perspective. I think that is another thing that people might be experiencing with imposter syndrome. And that's actually really interesting. I actually want to go and look and learn more about that side of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I think it's perfection. I'm not sure that's 100% imposter syndrome. I think it ties in, but I think it's the perfectionist thing. And my tennis teacher used to say that. She used to say, you don't practice because you're a perfectionist and you're afraid that if you practice, you're not going to be as good as you think you could be. So it's yeah. Like I said, for me, I get it coming and going. So don't fail, don't succeed, stay right in the middle lane of above mediocrity and pretty good, but that's the safe zone.
Yeah. Playing it safe, that makes total sense.
Well, we're at the top of the hour here, so if people have to drop off, you're welcome to drop off. I think, I can stick around for just a few more minutes if more people have questions. Jamila, do you have a hard stop?
I can stick around for a couple of minutes as well.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions? Feel free to leave if you need to.
I got to go, but thank you so much. This was a fantastic session. Great topic. Another great Zoom. Angie, love them. Keep doing them. You have a lot of energy and you inspire me. So I will see you later.
Can I make one more question, please?
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
Ashley.
So I was wondering, since there are many lawyers who experience imposter syndrome like many years later, I'm wondering if you guys think that the top lawyers in our country, all these older partners or so whatever in the top law firms, what if they also have imposter syndrome, but they're just better at hiding it than all of us because they have more years of experience? I don't know. That's just something I thought about.
I don't know if they do hide it. I think everybody feels it at some point, on some level, honestly, just because we're all growing, and it's hard for us to step back and realize when we've actually grown. So I do think, yes, probably all the lawyers that you see at some point probably feel it at some point in their careers. I don't think if you talk to most of us that they would say that they never felt it. I think some of us are better at, coming up with strategies to handle it. And I think some of us are better at managing it. But I think we do all feel it at some point.
Absolutely. Don't be fooled. Everybody, regardless of age, position, we've all felt it.
And gender, I think it's important.
And gender, exactly. Everybody's felt it. And sometimes it's not related to work. Sometimes it's for people, it's about their personal life. So I met someone the other day who felt like he didn't deserve to have the wife that he had. So he was feeling imposter syndrome in his marriage because he felt like his wife was far too good for him and he didn't deserve to have her. So yeah, it comes for different people in different ages, different aspects. Why it appears like they are hiding it well is because they've had years of experience coping with it and getting strategies to cope with it. And that's why we're all here, aren't we? It's to learn about it, get information about it, and then find ways of dealing with it. But yeah, don't be fooled. We all feel it.
And I think it's important to note, like we have a lot of women on the meetup today, and so we didn't get to hear the stories of a lot of men. But I mean, I talk to mentees who are men all the time who also struggle with these issues. So it's not, I don't think it's gender specific at all. Don't feel like just because you're a woman, like you're feeling these feelings and your male counterparts are not. They do. They handle it differently. And I think in some ways for men, they've been taught never to share their weaknesses. In some ways, it's almost easier for women because we do build tribes easier. We do find outlets to communicate about those things. And sometimes for men, they don't feel as comfortable doing that. Our society hasn't given them that outlet. So yeah, don't think it's a uniquely female experience. I think we all struggle with it for sure.
Agreed. And fun fact, this was imposter syndrome originally was often associated with women, but research has shown that both men and women experience it at similar rates.
Well, I hope this has been helpful for everyone. I really appreciate you all taking the time to spend it with us today. And if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me or Jamila on LinkedIn, and you can always send follow-up questions to us. And just wanted to give everybody a reminder that tomorrow we have a virtual networking event. So if you're looking for more ways to connect with people, tomorrow's event will be much more interactive, where you'll actually get to meet one-on-one with one person in a breakout room. So if you're interested, we have a virtual happy hour at 4 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. And all prospective law students, current law students, and lawyers are welcome. So please come join us. We're excited to meet all of you. And if you need the registration link, just check my LinkedIn profile. It's there. And if anybody has anything else, I think we'll go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much, Jamila, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.